Welcome back to NFL Weekly. I'm Nick Sinafani.
I'm Brenden.
There were lots of great games this week, and we're here to cover all of Week 2 for you.
Game number 1 was the Browns-Jets on Monday Night Football. Baker had a solid 325 yards, but he only came out with one touchdown and an interception. Nick Chubb had a solid game with 62 yards and a touchdown. OBJ went off with 161 yards and a touchdown. On the Jets side of things, with their third-string quarterback playing, Falk had 198 yards, no touchdowns to come up with. Le'Veon Bell still struggling with only 68 yards and 21 attempts. It was a rough one for the Jets when they got taken down by the Browns 23-3.
Our next game was between two former Heisman-winning quarterbacks that could be the future of this league, between Kyler Murray and Lamar Jackson. Kyler Murray had an impressive game against a tough Ravens defense who usually dominates against rookie quarterbacks, throwing for 350 yards but also didn't have a touchdown. Lamar Jackson threw for 24 for 37, 272 yards and 2 touchdowns, but also showed what he could do with his legs, running for 120 as well. Mark Andrews, another phenomenal game, great start to the season with 8 receptions and 112 yards. And Larry Fitzgerald's looking like he's ageless right now with 104 yards, as well as the young Christian Kirk going for 114 as well. The Ravens pulled out a close one, almost a comeback by Kyler Murray and the Cardinals, but they pulled it out 23-17.
Game number 3, we got the Seahawks at the Steelers. Russell Wilson, just as great as normal, throwing for 300 yards and 3 touchdowns. Tyler Lockett hauled in 10 of those receptions and 79 yards. Mason Rudolph of the Steelers filling in for Ben Roethlisberger as he went down with an injury. Threw for 112 yards with 2 touchdowns, but also threw an interception. James Conner continues his very slow start with 11 attempts and only 33 yards. He also came down with a touchdown, though, so kind of helped out his fantasy owners right there. Juju as wide receiver 1, now that Brown's gone, hauled in 5 receptions and 84 yards, but still not enough to take down the Seattle Seahawks when they went down 28-26.
Our next game brings us to Tennessee, where the Titans took on the Colts. Derrick Henry continues his fast start, rushing for 81 and a touchdown, impressing his fantasy owners through 2 weeks so far. Marcus Mariota struggles this week, 154 yards and a touchdown. And a weird game for Jacoby Brissett, throwing 17 of 28 with 146 yards, but also 3 touchdowns. One of those going to his favorite receiver, T.Y. Hilton, as well as Eric Ebron, too. Paris Campbell with his first career touchdown, too. Jordan Wilkins with an impressive game as the backup running back. It could get him possibly some more snaps. And the Colts took this one 19-17.
Next game, we got the Redskins of Washington hosting the Cowboys of Dallas. Dak Prescott continues his fast start with 270 yards and 3 touchdowns. Zeke, after coming out of his long holdout, had 23 attempts, 111 yards and a touchdown. Very impressive for his fantasy owners. On the other side of the ball, AP had only 25 yards and a touchdown. Case Keenum has proved that he earned the starting spot of the Redskins with 220 yards and 2 touchdowns, but still not enough to beat the flaming hot Cowboys as they pulled out 31-21.
As we head down to Miami Hard Rock Stadium, it's another ugly one. 43-0. Not too much to say here other than the Patriots defense was dominant, putting up 30-something fantasy points while causing the Dolphins quarterbacks to throw 4 picks, 2 of those being returned for touchdowns, I believe. And Sony Michel also having a good game. Other than that, not too much to say here.
The next game, we got the Giants hosting the Bills as Josh Allen continues his hot start with 253 yards and a touchdown. Frank Gore seems like he has not aged one bit with 68 yards and a touchdown. Cole Beasley, coming over from Dallas, hauls in 4 receptions and 83 yards. On the Giants side, Saquon, of course, has another big game with 107 yards and a touchdown. Eli Manning, he's aging very horribly. 2 interceptions he got today. Bills pull one out, 28-14.
The stash himself, Gardner Minshew, throwing 23 of 33, 213 yards and a touchdown, while also putting it on the ground for 6 attempts, 56 yards. Solid. DJ Chark, great start to the season so far, hauling in 7 for 55 and a touchdown, as well as Chris Conley having a good game too. 4 receptions and 73 yards. Hopkins was held back by his good friend Jalen Ramsey, as usual. You just can't seem to do much against him, but the Texans did pull this one out 13-12.
Next, we got the Lions hosting the Chargers, as Matthew Stafford, impressive in his first couple weeks, to 245 yards and 2 touchdowns, but also throwing 2 interceptions. Kenny Galladay, what a great week he had. 8 receptions, 117 yards, and a touchdown. These Lions are looking pretty good this year. On the Chargers end, Austin Eckler, 66 yards and a touchdown. I'm pretty sure that the Chargers are missing Melvin Gordon a little bit. Hopefully he can come out of holding out soon. Lions pull this one out 13-10.
The home opener for the Cincinnati Bengals did not go as expected. This rushing attack by the 49ers looked dominant against this weak Bengals defense. And can we talk about Dante Pettis throwing for a perfect passer rating, 1 for 1 for 16 yards? Very impressive. Garoppolo, not a perfect passer rating, but he also did put up 17 for 25, 297 yards, and 3 touchdowns, while also throwing a pick. Mixon, still off to a very slow start. 11 attempts, 17 yards. Hopefully he can pick it up. The Niners take this one 41-17.
The next game, we go to Lambeau as the Packers take on their rivals, the Minnesota Vikings. Aaron Rodgers, very impressive with 209 yards and 2 touchdowns. Aaron Jones, what a great start with 23 attempts, 116 yards and a touchdown. Devontae Adams, as usual, 106 yards. Nothing surprising there. On the Vikings end of things, Dalvin Cook, another huge week for his fantasy owners. 154 yards on the ground with a touchdown. Kirk Cousins still not liking this run-first offense. Kirk Cousins only threw for 230 yards and a touchdown, also managing 2 picks. This Green Bay Packers defense, they look legit right here. They might be a real Super Bowl contender. Pull this one out 21-16.
Our next game takes us to Oakland for the last football game to ever be played on a baseball field, between the Chiefs and the Raiders. The Raiders got off to a quick start, taking a 10-0 lead into the second quarter, but Mahomes was activated. 30 for 44, 443 yards, and 4 touchdowns, all coming in the second quarter. And a fantastic game by DeMarcus Robinson, who seems like he could be a huge breakout candidate this year. Travis Kelce, of course, solid with 7 receptions for 107 yards. And Darren Waller has looked very impressive too for this Raiders team. This might not have been the best game, but I think they might have a future star here. The Chiefs take this one 28-10 with no scoring after the second quarter.
Next, we take it to Los Angeles when the Rams take on the Saints in an NFC rematch. Drew Brees goes down as the Saints lose 27-9. Teddy Bridgewater has to step in, only throwing for 165 yards. Todd Gurley breaks out this week with 63 yards and a touchdown. Cooper Kupp comes out as Jared Goff's favorite target once again after coming off of injury last year with 5 receptions, 120 yards. Rams pull this one out 27-9 as the Saints can't get their revenge.
The next game takes us to Mile High in Denver, where the Broncos took on the Bears. Mitch Trubisky, again, just doesn't look like he's improving a lot, throwing for 120 yards, and that's it. Now Flacco, on the other hand, had a pretty good game, throwing 50 times, completing 35 of those for 292 yards and a touchdown that gave them the lead late in the game. But Trubisky drove them up the field, and Pinheiro, yes, Eddie Pinheiro, kicked a game-winning 53-yard field goal. You guys are hearing me right. A very good game here in Denver despite the low score. 16-14 Bears.
Next, we take to Atlanta, where the Falcons host the Eagles. Matt Ryan had a solid 320 yards and 3 touchdowns. Despite his 3 interceptions, a pretty solid game. Julio Jones had 106 yards with 2 touchdowns. One of those touchdowns was a game winner. On the Eagles side of things, Carson Wentz was 230 yards, a touchdown, and 2 picks. Nelson Aguilar, 8 receptions, 107 yards, and a touchdown. Looks like Carson Wentz's favorite target right now. The Falcons pulled this one out 24-20. It was a very exciting game.
We take it to Charlotte, where the Panthers are taking on the Buccaneers. Cam Newton with a very odd game, throwing for 333 yards, but completing less than 50% of his passes, and also going without a touchdown or a pick. The 0 touchdowns went for his whole team too, when they didn't crack pay dirt once. All field goals throughout 3 quarters and a safety in the 4th. Jameis Winston throwing 16 of 25 for 208 and a touchdown. A decent game for him, I guess. But Chris Godwin with a breakout game, hauling in 8 for 121 and a touchdown. Something about this Panthers team just doesn't look right. Hopefully they can get it together, but the Bucks take this one 20-14. For Team of the Week, we had to give it to the Niners for ruining Zach Taylor's home opener, beating the Bengals by 24. Garoppolo, very solid, throwing for 303 touchdowns. And this rushing attack had a fantastic game, with Breida running for 121, Raheem Mostert running for 83, and Jeff Wilson for 34. Deebo Samuel also with a very impressive start to the season, hauling in 5 for 87 and a touchdown. This whole team just clicked this game, as well as the defense, and they just looked really well rounded overall. This led them to a 41-17 win over the Bengals.
For Player of the Week, we got Patty Mahomes throwing for 443 yards and 4 touchdowns. All those 4 touchdowns coming in the second quarter. He went 30 for 44 and had almost a perfect passer rating once again. This led the Chiefs to the 28-10 win over their rivals, the Oakland Raiders.
And of course, for Mustache of the Week, we're giving it to Gardner Minshew. Of course, there are absolutely no other candidates. He blows everyone out of proportion. This dude is fantastic. Thank you for joining us on the Week 2 segment of NFL Weekly. I'm Nick Senefani.
I'm Brenden Garula.
And we'll be back next week to recap Week 3.